What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of North Star Sportscast. We got a lot to get into, so we might as well just jump in. First thing we're going to start with, just because we got a lot of Vikings information to get to, a lot of stuff to get to. We're just going to start with Joe Mauer. Grew up watching Joe Mauer, easily one of my favorite Twins of all time, but he is going to be retired. Number 7 is going to be retired, and just an amazing player. I mean, he ended his career at a 306 average and still batted 282 last year. He's easily one of my favorite Twins.
Well, and when you look at the company that he's joining there among the retired numbers for the Twins, I mean, you got Harmon Killebrew and Rod Carew. And
oh, it's quite the elite,
it's
absolutely.
Definitely, and so I think that's a super high honor for him, and I know that it's the way that he should go down.
For sure. It's so nice to see him retire a Twin. I was really worried he wasn't going to. He absolutely deserves a ring. But, I mean, he's got an MVP, 3-time Gold Glove, 5-time Silver Slugger, most of these as a catcher. So it's amazing, really.
Well, and the big stat that stands out to me, too, is he's the only catcher with multiple batting titles, and he won 3. So, yeah. I mean, I see him as a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame.
He should be. There's going to be a lot of debate there, obviously, because he didn't get a ring. But I would agree. I believe he should be in there.
Statistics-wise, yes.
Oh,
I think he's one of the greatest catchers of all time.
Absolutely.
So now let's get into the Minnesota Vikings talk.
So we're going to start by reviewing last week's Dolphins game. Big game for the Vikings. You know, Kevin Stefanski, new offense, but honestly, we excelled.
Absolutely for sure. I think the biggest stat that you see there is the 21 points off 3 scores in the first quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just huge.
And I believe we had 202 total yards in the first quarter. That is the most for any team this year.
Yeah, and I mean, when you compare that to the highfalutin offenses like the Rams and the Saints, I mean, that's pretty impressive. One thing that I see overshadowed is people want to say, okay, well, they only played in the first and fourth quarter, but you put up 41 points, you're going to beat any team.
Regardless, you put up 41 points, that's a pretty darn good output.
Yeah, and I mean, when you have a defense who only gives up 10, obviously you have the interception by Kirk Cousins, but
you can't really put that on Kirk just because that's an absolute timing play. The defense just read it well. It's going to happen. I'm not going to put that one on Kirk.
And that's what it boils down to. I mean, it was just a good defensive play, and I mean, it's going to happen.
And so, I mean, Kirk ended. The big stat here that we're looking at is Kirk only threw 21 passes. If we can keep him around 20 to 30 passes, that's right where we want him.
Well, that was the goal when we brought him in this season. Because, I mean, you look at him for the Redskins, and he had to throw 40 passes to win a game.
Yeah.
And that was the promise from the Vikings is, hey, let's keep you in the 20 throw ranges and still get you wins.
Yeah, exactly. Big news there for Dalvin Cook, NFC Offensive Player of the Week. 19 carries, 136 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is what we kind of expected from Dalvin coming in, and if he can just stay healthy, I expect him to continue doing this going forward.
Well, when you look at his runs, I mean, a lot of it, obviously it was good blocking by the offense, but he made people miss.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
And I mean, that's the stat. That's the unwritten stat there is how many people he made miss to get those touchdowns. I just know the first touchdown coming outside, I mean, he just beat that corner to the edge and got in the end zone.
For sure.
That's huge. And then he used a spin move on his second touchdown to get through the middle of the defensive line. I mean, that's another big thing there, too. So
And just absolutely overshadowing Latavius Murray, which is tough to say, but our RB2, 68 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's just how we have to play to win games.
Absolutely. We got to run the football, especially coming down the stretch. The way it's setting up, we're going to be at the Bears. We'll see. There's a lot to be decided, but if we go to the Bears, we got to be able to run the football like we did against Miami.
Well, and coming off of that, let's talk about where our division is sitting right now, or where the NFC in general is sitting. So we had a big game in San Francisco on Sunday night, and the big thing from that, I mean, is just you have the 49ers go in and beat the Seahawks.
Yeah,
I mean,
this was a huge game for the Vikings. This actually sets us up. If we can win out and Seattle lose one more, we take over that 5th spot. And
depending on that last game. We both either have to lose or win that last game for us to...
Yeah, so that was a big one. The 49ers really stepped up for us. But, I mean, if you go back to our Seattle game, we had a chance to win. So, and I think anybody that we play, we have a good chance to win.
Yeah, for sure. We also look at... So the Eagles beat the Rams. And
of course. And
I think this is a lot of hype.
Yeah.
I think more so than actual...
Yeah, I think Foles played well, but I think the Rams, I think they peaked too early, and I think people are really starting to learn how to shut them down. and I could see them being a one and done.
Well, and I think the biggest stat here is everybody has all this talk about Nick Foles, but he threw 1 pick and no touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a quarterback for success. I mean, that's not a stat line for success from a quarterback.
It really wasn't. It was kind of a sloppy game.
Well, and I believe Jared Goff threw 2 picks too.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. I mean, I think we'll see the Rams going on. What's going to happen with them? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
just kind of a continuation there.
for sure.
I think, like I was saying, I think they peaked too early.
Yeah.
And they're coming down.
Well, and then we have the Saints. They beat the Panthers.
And we needed that game.
And it was a narrow game too. I mean, it was pretty tightly contested right up until the end. So.
For sure.
I mean, that puts us in a good spot though there with the Panthers being at 6-8 now. Redskins, they beat the Jags despite what I believed would happen. I mean, I thought the Jags were going to beat them.
That's what I
but
thought too.
that puts them at 7-7, so they're still in the playoff race along with the Eagles. And I think that loss to the Packers, I mean, that puts them out. They're 5-8-1 now.
Yeah, I mean, as a Minnesota native, it's not too often you get to say Rodgers is out of the playoff picture, but it feels good.
For sure.
But yeah, so there are many scenarios here that the Vikings actually have potential to clinch this weekend. We need a loss by Washington, a win against Detroit, and then the Eagles can either lose or tie, because remember we have the tiebreaker against them. We beat them in Philly. And that is the way the Vikings can clinch this weekend.
Yeah, and the game, I mean, when you look at those games, you got the Eagles against the Texans, and I think the Texans are playing really well right now.
They are. I think the Texans are going to be a pretty decent outlook for the AFC. The only thing I can say is it will be in Philly, and everybody knows how tough it is to win in Philly.
For sure. And then the second game there, I mean, you got the Redskins and the Titans.
Yeah, Redskins and Titans, and that's at Tennessee. And if Derrick Henry can continue running the way he is, I think that's an easy win for the Titans.
For sure. And so now we look to the most important game of the week, and that's the Vikings and the Lions. So if you look at the statistics for the Lions, I mean, they're pretty mediocre. I mean, they're right there in the middle of the pack on most of these statistics.
For sure. The only thing you got to watch out for is a team with nothing to lose can be very scary.
Exactly, especially when you have a team in the Vikings that there's such big expectations for them to win this game.
Absolutely. And if with the Vikings, every Viking fan knows any game we're supposed to win ends up coming down to the wire.
Exactly.
So if we can just go in and take care of business, we're going to need to run the ball, which is going to be a lot harder than running against Miami, and we need to get to Stafford.
Well, and that's the key for me is, 10 sacks against him last game, and we see what that did to him. So, I mean, this game we have to do the same thing.
He just didn't want to get up. But, yeah, we need to get to Stafford and run the ball.
Well, I think the biggest key to getting to Stafford is getting a lead early. If we can get a lead early like we did against the Dolphins, you can have your defense pin their ears back and just get the quarterback.
For sure. The nice thing about the Lions, for some odd reason, they just don't run the football, and Stafford throws 50 times a game.
Exactly.
And that's easily going to help. The nice thing we got coming into today's Wednesday, injury report, the only Viking that did not practice was Eric Kendricks, and that was definitely precautionary.
Yes.
But this late in the season, that's a very good injury report.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Vikings have seen all season long is we struggle with injuries throughout the season. So now to have guys healthy, I think that's really going to pay dividends going down the stretch.
For sure. Just got to continue to play decent on the offensive line. That's all we need to ask is decent.
Yeah, and two things I just want to point out here. So coming into last week, the Vikings were number 5 in total defense. This week now into that number 4 spot, and I think that this is just huge going in. I mean, it's just supports the claims that Zimmer is one of the best defensive-minded coaches.
And I think just one of the best coaches in the league. I mean, look what he did with Stefanski. He went ahead, he made the move, and in the end, it really, at least for now, it really paid off.
Yeah, for sure. So what is your prediction for this game?
Prediction for this game? I think we actually come into Detroit, and these games always end up being close, but I think if we run the football, I honestly think it's probably going to be 28-14, somewhere around there.
And that's exactly what I just thought in my head. I see a 20, but I'm going to go different because I have to. We're going to go 28-10. I think Minnesota defense really steps up here.
Well, the thing about the defense is they're finally starting to get to their peak here, and they're just dominating on football.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, 10 points against Miami, that's insane.
Who's your standout player for the Vikings this week?
Standout player, I honestly think I could see Dalvin being a big part of this one again. I just don't think teams are going to key in on us for the run game as of yet. And I think going forward, we're going to start opening up Diggs and Thielen, but I think Dalvin gets it on this one.
I'm going to go, not a player, but as a position, I think the offensive line is really going to step up in this game. I think they have a lot of confidence coming out of last week. Clearly Dolphins' defense isn't a pushover. So I just see the offensive line carrying a lot of confidence into this next game, opening up holes for Dalvin Cook and keeping Kirk Cousins off his butt.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is just giving Cousins just enough time. If we got to win that turnover ratio. The only thing on knock the Vikings defense on right now is we're not getting any turnovers. But I mean, if you're holding your opponent to 10 points a game.
Yeah, well, and I mean that's the thing.
Turnovers.
Vikings are number one still on third down defense, and I think that. I mean, that is the turnover to me. You know what I mean? If you can hold them to third down and stop them and keep them in the 3rd and 12s and 3rd and 15s, I mean. I think that's
big shout out, though. I want to go back to the Dolphins game is our special teams. They played phenomenal. Marcus Sherrills played brilliantly, and then obviously Dan Bailey didn't miss a kick.
Yeah.
So knock on wood, I thought special teams was actually the game changer last week.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you just see. I mean, we talked about that last week about how that had to happen going forward for us to be successful, and I just saw. I mean, great blocking on special teams, and Marcus Sherrill just had great vision going down the field.
Well, the big thing on special teams, too, is I don't think we had a penalty.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, that's huge, especially when you get long runs. I mean, it's demoralizing to get a long run and have a call back for holding or something like that.
For sure. So, what did you see in the differences in Stefanski's offense?
You know, I thought it was a very, very easy going offense. Like, if you want to say it, there wasn't a whole much a flash. I mean, obviously a lot more running, which we all expected. But I mean, it was just an easy offense, and I think if you let your playmakers just play the game, don't give them too much to think about, you know, good things happen. And obviously, we saw that.
Yeah, for sure, and I mean that's the biggest take for me too, is just the smoothness of the offense. I mean, you just see guys that aren't. You don't have wide receivers who don't look like they know what they're doing. I mean, that's what I saw out of DeFilippo's offense. You have wide receivers running around the field. And it's just, I mean, if anything, it's just confusing the offense. It's not confusing the defense.
Well, and you see a lot of negative plays. And in our first drive, we didn't have a negative play.
Exactly.
And, I mean, that's huge. If you can stay ahead of the sticks and you're not first
I don't even think we saw a third down.
Yeah, or
on
two,
our first drive.
I don't think we did either.
So.
And the big thing is you know, when we did have, you know, 2nd and 20s, but we were running draws and we were getting 10 of those back.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we're just staying ahead of the sticks. And I think if we can continue to do that, it's going to be a big thing for our offense and a big thing for our offensive line.
For sure. So what do you think has made the defense so successful these last couple weeks?
You know, we kind of keep touching on it. You know, it's definitely third down, and then obviously the red zone defense.
Yeah, and I mean, I just look at it as our coverage is much better on the outsides. I think we have guys stepping up. I mean, Xavier Rhodes hadn't played super great this year, and I think most of it is he had played great, but we expect so much of him.
Yeah,
so when he does get beat, it's disappointing. But I think that he's really stepped up and become that elite corner that we expected from him last year. And I think guys like Holton Hill have really stepped up. And Harris.
Trey Waynes. I mean, and we're really starting to get healthy.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
the big thing is what team is the healthiest in December?
Well, I think the biggest surprise that I see is we have Sendejo.
Injured reserve.
Yes, and then...
George Iloka.
George
I don't
Iloka.
think he's even touched the field.
Well, that's what I'm saying is those were the two guys we were expecting to take that safety spot.
And Anthony Harris.
And we have Anthony Harris come in out of nowhere.
And absolutely killed it. And I could see us dropping Sendejo just because he's such an injury liability. And I think we should extend Harris.
I think we'll extend Harris, get rid of Iloka, and I think that we'll go young again. I think either we'll pick up somebody from free agency, promote somebody from practice squads, or even draft somebody.
For sure.
But I just see that position's been pretty locked up by Harris in these last couple
I've been
weeks.
pleasantly surprised. And, I mean, we can't forget about, you know, we're giving these shout-outs for last game, but Anthony Barr, his last 2 games, he's played phenomenal.
Yes,
he had
definitely.
2 sacks last week.
Yeah. What is the most important game for the Vikings this week, obviously, besides their own game?
You know, I'd probably just have to say the Philly game. Because I think if Philly can if Houston can go into Philly and Philly wins, you know, especially with how well Houston's doing, I think that gives Philly a lot of momentum. And not only does it keep them in the race for the wild card, but, you know, who knows. Just thankfully that we have, ties are a good thing and a bad thing. In this case, it is helping us, but thank God we went into Philly and we took care of business.
Definitely. And I think my biggest game for us this week is I'm looking forward. I mean, I don't see there being any reason the Vikings don't make it to the playoffs this year. Just the way that they've played the last couple weeks and the way I expect them to continue playing. So I see the biggest game this week for the Vikings is that Seahawks-Chiefs game. I think the Chiefs should beat them, but I mean, it's again one of those tough places you got to go in and play at Seattle. But yeah, I think that's one of the more important games for the Vikings.
For sure. And Patrick Mahomes just has to go in there. He's got to take care of business. I mean, we say this for every game, but I think we easily had an opportunity to beat the Seahawks. But I would definitely agree with that. The only thing is, what do you see with the Cowboys? Because it's very possible if we take that 5 seed, we could easily be playing the Cowboys.
And I mean, that's the thing is I think I trust our defense playing the Cowboys. We're good against the run, and I don't see Dak Prescott as a passing threat. I don't think anybody should see Dak Prescott as a passing threat.
Well, that's the big thing. I think if we can shut down, and knock on wood because we're putting the cart in front of the horse here, but if we can shut down the run and Xavier shadow Amari Cooper, I mean, I see that being a decent game for us, and that's going to be indoors.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest thing is playing on the road is one thing, but when you play on the road outdoor, it's a lot different. And I mean, the Vikings are used to playing indoor.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So I think playing in Dallas isn't as big as going to like Seattle and playing outdoors, or going to Green Bay and playing outdoors.
Well, and the easier thing there is if it's easier for us, I believe, to run the football against the Cowboys than it would be against Chicago. I'm not afraid of Chicago, but it would be easier to run the football.
Well, and my biggest thing, too, is the Cowboys' secondary isn't that great.
No.
I mean, they're one of those teams that if you can get the run going and force their secondary to step up a little bit, I mean, then you can pass over the top of them.
Yeah, I mean, they just have a decent defensive line, and their linebackers are good.
But compared to Chicago, I think I'd rather face the Cowboys' defensive line.
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah. I mean, we're obviously going to put the Vikings right up there because we're Vikings fans, but Chicago's defensive line is easily one of the best units in the league.
For sure. And one of the things I see that's very similar between the Cowboys and the Bears is if you can shut down that run game, you can control that game. Because in Trubisky and in Prescott, you have two quarterbacks that are relatively young, relatively inexperienced in playoffs, and also they just haven't proven themselves to be great assets to the team this year.
No, they can run the football, but I don't see them either one of them as prolific passers.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be huge. I mean, there's a lot of shifting that's going to be going on this week and in the next week.
For sure,
to see what playoff seeding is going to look like.
But we gotta go into Detroit and we gotta take care of business.
For sure, we can't overlook that game. I don't think we can overlook any game to the end of the season now. Even if we do clinch next week, we still got to play that Bears game like we're playing for something.
Absolutely, and the Bears could still be playing for something. They could still be playing for a bye week.
Plus, wouldn't it just be great to get a win against the Bears?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially at home, get a little confidence going into the playoffs.
Into the playoffs, absolutely.
So let's talk about the Vikings have 4 Pro Bowlers. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yep, we got Adam Thielen. Absolutely expected him.
For sure.
Anthony Barr was a bit of a surprise for me. He's definitely played well down the stretch here. Bit of a surprise. What do you think about Anthony Barr?
I mean, I think that's the biggest surprise out of our picks. Sure. I expected somebody else like Stephon Diggs to be in there.
Yeah,
so when I saw 4 Pro Bowlers, when I went through it in my head, I expected Thielen, I expected Danielle Hunter, I expected Harrison Smith. The one guy I didn't expect was Anthony Barr.
Well, and the thing is Stephon Diggs is, I believe, 36 yards away from 1,000 yards, and that would be the first time the Vikings have 2,000-yard catchers, receivers since 2000.
Yeah, and I mean, Anthony Barr, if you look at the beginning of the season, I mean, he was just awful.
He was awful in coverage, but part of that was scheme, but I would definitely say he was the surprise. The thing about Diggs is I believe he's one of the few, if not the only, to have 0 drops.
Yeah. Which is, I mean,
that's amazing.
That's a huge statistic. I mean, when you look at that, that's one of those ones that the best. I mean, I liken him to somebody like Larry Fitzgerald. If you throw the ball in his area, he's gonna catch it. And I think we saw that against the Dolphins when there was a back shoulder catch on the first drive. Yeah,
and that was an amazing catch.
It was really interesting. I watched the podcast and they were talking. It was Cousins and Diggs talking, and Cousins just talked about how it's such a huge asset to have a guy like that where that's a go route. But he knows that Diggs is like smart enough to know if he throws that back shoulder pass, he's going to come off the coverage and catch the ball.
For sure, and I was listening to that as well, and that's amazing because if you think about it, with Cousins and his receivers, whether that's Diggs, Thielen, Rudolph, whoever it may be, it's still early.
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
not even a year through these guys.
I mean, that's the thing I see is this chemistry is just continually building.
Absolutely.
And I see we have all those guys locked up for the next couple of years, and I think that's going to be huge going forward.
For sure.
Not just in this season.
And going forward, I think one of the big things is that we need to get Rudolph involved. If we can keep running the ball, it's not going to be a huge thing. But I think Rudolph needs to be a bigger picture of the passing game.
Yeah, for sure. And I noticed that especially in the Dolphins game is you have Rudolph lined up to go out for a pass, and they're calling him in to bolster that offensive line, to help block. And I think that that's not a terrible thing, but I think that's misusing one of our key assets.
Absolutely, and I think that's going to be one of the bigger things with David Morgan coming back off an injury. That's really going to help Rudolph, because David Morgan he's a very good run blocker.
For sure.
And, we only saw him about 20 plays last week, but for those plays, yes, he was a little rusty, but you could definitely notice he was in there. And speaking of which, our tight ends in general played very well last week.
Yeah, they really did. I mean, I just noticed just pass blocking, run blocking, and going out for receptions. I mean, it was just, you had that one play on the sideline, Conklin just got smoked, and I mean, he hung onto the ball and got his feet in.
And he had that third and one catch.
Yeah.
He had over 50 yards. He actually led receivers in receiving last week, big time. So we talked about Barr, we talked about Thielen for the Pro Bowl. Danielle Hunter, that was absolutely no surprise to me. 13 and a half sacks, absolute stud.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that we locked him down for, I believe, 4 years, 5 years. I think it was 4 years, 72 or something like that.
I think so.
That one was absolutely no surprise to me. Harrison, obviously, we all know Harrison.
Well, I think that those two players just even just not in their statistics, they add so much to the team. When you have Danielle Hunter coming in, that's a double team right there.
Oh yeah, that's absolute double team.
And I mean, when you double team him, you got guys like Everson Griffin and Sheldon Richardson and Linval Joseph coming up,
Anthony Barr,
and Stephen Weatherly. I mean, you got these guys. And even Harrison Smith, you got him coming off. I mean, they just add so much to the defense.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's not covered in statistics.
It's amazing to think how many key pieces we have there that are locked down.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than Anthony Barr, who honestly I don't see as resigning. It's amazing how many key pieces we have locked down. And, since we're talking about defense, let's not forget Mackenzie Alexander.
Yeah, for sure. He had a sack this last week.
And he's got 4 total this year, which ties Griffin for the most from a cornerback.
Yeah, which is, I mean, I think that's just huge. And he's been not only great in the pass rush, but he's also been great in coverage. I mean, you see it this week. He had there was a throw down the middle to Amendola, and he got his hand. I mean, it was triple coverage. But just to get his hand in there to prevent the catch was huge.
Absolutely. I actually think he was the highest graded defensive... Actually, I think he was the highest graded... Was he the highest graded Minnesota Viking from the defense or from the Dolphins game?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, that's amazing. And if he can continue to do that down the stretch, that's really going to fill that void from Mike Hughes.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of us forget about.
So after this week, what do you see is big? What do the Vikings still need to build on to get a big push into the playoffs?
It'd be nice to see that the offense is consistent with the new coach.
Yeah, for sure.
One game is awesome. 41 points is a big thing, but I think we can't be one and done with the offense.
For sure.
Defense has to continue on third down like they have all year. Red zone is huge, especially when you get into the playoffs, but we just got to be consistent on offense.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that I see is Kirk Cousins really has to play well down the stretch. I said it last week. I'm going to say it again this week.
And everybody's going to say it every week.
One, with the new offensive coordinator, there's no excuse there. I mean, we saw last week that the offense can run smooth.
Absolutely.
It's just one of those things where he has to make those throws to Aldrick Robinson. He's got to make those open throws to Stephon Diggs.
Those are open throws,
which he did. I mean, he's got to do that.
Because you can't be paid $84 million to miss open throws.
Exactly. And the other part, too, is, I mean, if you don't have anything there, you got to get outside the pocket. He's a mobile quarterback, and this is what we expect from him. If he can't make anything happen with his arm, we got to have him get out and make things happen with his feet. And I think the biggest part of that is off play action.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you get
he's dominant on play action. He was I actually believe he had a perfect passer rating in play action against the Dolphins.
Well, I saw so much criticism about his play action, and I think he's one of the best play action quarterbacks in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And I think so. The Minnesota has to do a better job of getting the run game established so that we can open up play action.
But I think that actually goes hand in hand. I think when you're running the play action so well, it'll relieve that run because the linebackers aren't so quick to come up and fill holes.
Exactly.
So I think it all just goes together.
For sure.
And I think when we can get the play action going, we can get the running game consistent. That I think Diggs and Thielen are just going to take off from there.
For sure. So now we're going to go through our picks for this week.
Yeah, and I think we could probably give a little bit of a preview. depending on the game. But the first game here, and thankfully we got Saturday football back.
Yeah, for sure.
And a big game for us is the first game on Saturday, and that's the Redskins at the Titans. I'm going Titans all the way. We need the Titans to win. I think Derrick Henry goes off on the Redskins again. He's been running very well, so I'm going Titans on this one.
I'm going to go with Titans as well, but I'm going to go for a different reason. I think Mariota will steal the show in this one. I just think he's mobile enough to get outside the pocket. If they stop Derrick Henry, they still have Mariota to lead that team to victory.
This is a big one for us, the Titans and Redskins, but probably one of the biggest games of the weekend
for the NFL.
For the NFL in general is the Ravens and the Chargers. I think the Chargers, honestly, are one of the best teams in the NFL, if not the best team in the AFC. I think the Chargers take this one if they can shut down Lamar Jackson. I haven't been a huge fan of Lamar Jackson. I've been a little critical of him. But he goes in and he wins games. That's the big thing in the NFL.
I'm going to agree with you on the outcome of this game, but my biggest thing, I think the Chargers are way overrated. I mean, if you look at the division that they play in, sure, they beat the Chiefs, but look at the play that they beat them on. I mean, it was a push-off in the end zone for that touchdown. I don't think it should have been a touchdown. Secondly, wide open on the two-point conversion, regardless of what you say.
Yeah.
And I just look at their division just isn't that strong. The division they play in isn't very strong. I mean, with the exception of the Chiefs, they got Denver and the Raiders.
Yeah.
And I just think that they're one of the most overrated teams in the AFC. I think they're out in the first round.
Well, and I watched the game against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs' defensive line absolutely dominated the Chargers. The only big thing for the Chargers is they are saying that Melvin Gordon is supposed to be back.
Well, and they have Phillip Rivers. I think Phillip Rivers, I mean, as much criticism as they want to put on him, he throws touchdowns. Sure, he throws 4 picks, but if he throws 4 picks, he's going to throw 6 touchdowns, and I think that's the big...
Have you ever watched Phillip Rivers throw football?
Yeah.
It is not the most
It's
athletic
not, but it works. It works.
It does work.
And,
it does open.
So I'm also picking the Chargers in that game, but I don't think that they're the best team in the AFC.
So the next one here we got is the Bengals at the Browns, and honestly, the Browns for me are becoming one of the funnest NFL teams to watch.
For sure.
They're really turning it around. I think they could be a big deal next year. But I think the Browns take care of the Bengals at home.
I think so, too. I mean, you have the Browns who are trending upward, and you have the Bengals who played very well at the beginning of the season but haven't done anything since. And so, I mean, I see the Browns taking it.
And again, I was very critical. I'm not a huge fan of running quarterbacks, but Baker Mayfield has impressed.
He's done well. I mean, it's one of those things you'll see in the future. I mean, the big wild card with young quarterbacks is you don't have a lot of tape on them. So I think forward next year in late into the season next year, we'll see what he's really made of.
Absolutely. You know, they don't call it a sophomore slump for nothing.
Exactly.
So we'll have to see with them. Next game, it's a pretty good game for the Vikings. It's going to be the Buccaneers at the Cowboys. I could see the Buccaneers actually going into Dallas and winning this game. It's really going to depend on if Dallas can get that running game going. I think they will. So I'm actually going to have to go with Dallas on this one.
And this is where I'm going to differ from you again. I see the Bucs going in and win this game. I know I picked the Bucs last week and they disappointed, but I think that the Cowboys are overlooking the Bucs. I think when the Cowboys got into this last week, they saw their remaining schedule, and I think they thought they were going to roll them.
Well, and I think the Cowboys could actually be, again, one of those teams that are trending down.
I think so, too.
They had their 5-game win streak, and they just got demolished by the Colts.
It's because teams know how to stop them.
Yeah.
If you can stop that run, Dak Prescott's not as good.
I'm not afraid of Dak Prescott.
I'm not either.
The only thing is if Amari Cooper can get open and Dak can simply throw the football. That's really what it is. I can't remember what game it was, but he missed Amari Cooper 3 times open for touchdowns.
Well, and the biggest thing about it is he's a short pass kind of guy. You know what I mean? If they could take away the long pass and force him into short passes, I think that's going to bode well for the Cowboys because that's what they want to do with Dak.
For sure.
So I think if you can play press and give him that throw downfield, he's not going to make it.
Absolutely.
I mean, we've just seen that time and time throughout the last couple weeks.
Next game just on the schedule here, Vikings at Lions. Obviously, we're going Vikings. I actually think it could be a big showing from the Vikings. Hopefully, cross our fingers. But these NFC games always end up being tight.
This is where we see what the Vikings are made of. If they can string 2 of these big games together and just come out and dominate, I think that this will put them in the minds of other people as a playoff contender.
And I think they'll get a lot of credit if they can go in and blow out the Lions. You know, I feel like we see this time and time again with the Vikings. We're supposed to beat these, and it always either ends up being a game at the end or we end up losing.
For sure.
But I'm going to absolutely, obviously go with the Vikings on this one.
Me too.
Next one here, no really implications for the Vikings, but it's going to be the Bills at the Patriots. Going Patriots.
I'm also going Patriots. I think this is actually a very big game for the Patriots. I mean, you look at the reports and everybody's losing their minds. I mean, Tom Brady's still one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. So I don't count them out for Super Bowl contenders. And I mean, that was what I heard this last week is everybody's losing their minds because they lost. And I don't think it's as big of a deal as everybody thinks. I think that this is a big game for them to regain some of that confidence. I see them beating the Bills at home.
I think ESPN gave them an 86% chance to win this game, but it's just amazing to see the Patriots at 9-5. It's very refreshing. It's going to be the first time
They haven't won 12 games.
I was going to say, I think
In
it's the first
5
time
seasons, I believe.
I actually believe it's 12.
Either way, it's a crazy statistic. I
It
mean,
is can you imagine just the dominance there?
yeah.
Man, that fan base is lucky, but no, I absolutely see the Patriots winning this
For
one.
sure.
Next one, which is very refreshing to say, it's Green Bay at the Jets, and this has nothing to do with the Vikings.
For sure. And I actually see the Jets winning this game.
I could see the Jets. It's going to be at the Jets, of course. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be arrogant, and I think and if you watch the game against who did they play last week, the Bears.
The Bears.
He missed a lot of throws.
He did. One, he threw the pick in the end zone that could have conceivably gotten him back into that game. I mean, it's right there at the end, and he threw the pick. I think it's his first pick in like 200-some attempts.
Yeah, I believe he actually set a record for that.
He did.
But no, I could see the Jets winning this game.
I do too. I think especially if you get the weather that you got last week, I think the Packers are so reliant on Aaron Rodgers to pass the ball now.
Which is amazing because they actually have a decent run game.
They do.
But for some odd reason, obviously it's Aaron Rodgers' show. That's the way it's always been. I think they're really going to have to make an overhaul with the coaching. And I'm glad we brought this up because there have been, not reports, but sayings that they are thinking maybe Nick Saban could take the job, which I think would be good for the Vikings.
I think so too.
What do you think about it?
I think it's in Nick Saban's best interest to stay in college football.
You
run one of the most successful programs of all time. You have a recruiting base that, I mean, who doesn't want to go to Alabama?
Absolutely.
And I just think that you've seen him come to the NFL before and just didn't have much success.
The only thing I can see with this is, as a reputation, as a man, I think he will want to go back to the NFL to prove something. And the thing is Nick Saban, he's got his championships, and he'll probably, I can guarantee if he stays there, he's going to win another one. Why not go to the NFL and clear that reputation?
I see a conflict here, though, with two alphas coming into the same place. I mean, you got Aaron Rodgers, who's very opinionated, and you got Nick Saban, who's very opinionated. And I just don't see this working out well for the Packers.
I can see, and I hope that the Packers try this because I think it could be a bad thing, but in the slight chance, I also think it could be a good thing, and I think Nick Saban is going to want to maybe take this on.
I don't see him leaving Alabama.
We'll just have to see with that one, but
especially if they end up winning another championship this year.
But I mean, if you think about it, he's got nothing really to play or nothing to coach for. He's got all these championships.
I'll take championships every single year.
But I just think as a man, I mean, yeah, that would be nice. But I think as a man, he's gonna want to move on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from, but I think either way, this is a good thing for the Vikings because if he does come up, it's gonna be a couple years before they're successful.
Either way, it's nice to see the Packers trending down.
For sure.
Next game, I think this is the biggest game for the Vikings besides our game. Obviously, it's gonna be the Texans at the Eagles. I think that the Foles deal is a little overrated. I think they did get a little bit of juice last week as a team from Foles playing, but I think the Texans go into Philly and they take care of business.
Yeah, for sure. I see there's so much debate about Carson Wentz, and my big thing is a healthy Carson Wentz is much better than a healthy Nick Foles. And I think that's the big key factor right now is that Carson Wentz, just isn't healthy. And that's why you see Nick Foles. I don't think it's a lack of confidence in Carson Wentz. I just think that they need him to get healthy.
And honestly, I could see, because Nick Foles is going to be a free agent this coming year, he's going to make big money. And I could honestly see the Eagles re-signing Nick Foles.
Oh, I could definitely see him signing Nick Foles.
You just never know.
I think he's going to be in a backup.
Backs are a bad deal, and he has torn ACL. So, I mean, that's not the greatest.
The Derrick Rose of the NFL.
Absolutely. So I could honestly see Nick Foles get a big contract from the Eagles.
For sure.
But I'm going Texans.
I'm also going to go Texans.
Okay, so we're agreeing on that one. Next one, the Panthers are still in the race, but it's going to be Falcons at Panthers. Cam Newton is not healthy. He needs to sit out the rest of the year. Tyler Heineke, who played for the Vikings, is the backup quarterback in Carolina, but This one's kind of a toss-up for me here, and I think that the Falcons will go into Carolina and take.
You're stealing my picks, man. I'm also going to go with the Falcons. I just see what they did last week. They went in and just dominated. So I see that same thing happening.
Well, and the Panthers against the Saints, which we wanted them to lose, but they looked terrible.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that domination last week was against the Cardinals, but their secondary is no joke, and they put up a lot of passing yards against them. So I also see the Falcons just going in.
For sure. The only way the Panthers can win this game is if Christian McCaffrey absolutely goes off, because he does it every week. He's prolific run game.
Yeah, I think he's the second player in the NFL championship era to have 50 passing yards, 50 rushing yards, and 50 receiving yards all in one game, and that was last week where he had the passing
amazing.
touchdown.
He's a fun guy to watch.
For sure.
He needs to go off, absolutely go off for them to win this game, but I'm taking the Falcons.
I'm also taking the Falcons.
Next game, this is going to be a big game for the Colts, and this is going to be the Giants at the Colts. I just see the Colts taking it over.
See, and I see New York winning this game. I think that they're on a good roll. I think that they're trying to they're not so much trying to finish the game or the season for playoff implications because they're out. But what I see is that it's a big pride thing for them. I think New York goes into the Colts and beats them.
And that the big thing is Saquon has to play well.
Sure.
That's another one of those teams where their top dog has to absolutely dominate.
For sure.
Saquon does have the ability. I don't see it happening for me. So I'm going Colts. Jeff's going Giants. Next game, again, no implications for the Vikings, but it is a big game for the Dolphins to get back into the race. And that is going to be the Jaguars at the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins are going to take that one on the chin. They're going to be upset. They're going to come back, and I actually think they might dominate the Jaguars on this one.
I don't see them dominating, but I do see them winning this game. I think Tannehill is going to have to have a big game. I think he's going to have a lot to prove coming off last week. Didn't do very well. Got sacked 9 times. I think it's going to be a huge game for him. But I do see the Dolphins winning this game.
And the thing about this game, though, is I think the Jags have a fairly similar defense to the Vikings with athletic linebackers, great defensive line, as long as the Dolphins can keep Tannehill upright.
I just don't see the Jags scoring enough points to win this game.
The Jags offense is awful.
And the Dolphins defense is no pushover.
No, it's okay. It's definitely okay. Next game, I think, is a huge game for the Rams themselves. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do with the Vikings, except for seeding. We could end up seeing maybe the Rams if the Bears can take over the Rams, but it's going to be Rams at Cardinals. I do think the Rams win this game, but I think they need to dominate this game to get back on track.
I think so too, and I think the Rams will win this game, but I don't see a domination. I see it being one of those things because the Cardinal secondary isn't terrible. I see Jared Goff goes into this game again and throws at least 2 picks.
For sure. So.
And I think that it's a low-scoring game, but I do think the Rams win it.
Okay, so we're going Rams both on that one. I mean, it's not a huge game for the Vikings anymore, but it is going to be Bears at the 49ers. The 49ers, the last 2 Decembers, have been absolutely dominant. I think the Bears are going to start toning it down a little bit. Yes, they're playing for a first-round bye, but we saw what the 49ers did to the Seahawks, and I think I'm going to go with the 49ers again on this one.
See, and I see where you're coming from, but I think the Bears win this game. I think their defense is just too much. Because, I mean, you saw the Seahawks get into the Niners later in the game, get another quarterback, and I see that this happens all game for the Bears. I'm picking the Bears, too. That being said, it's the same thing that I see in the Rams game. I think Trubisky goes out and throws at least 1 pick.
I mean, you can, granted, Kirk hasn't played the greatest, but, I mean, you can pretty much mark up an interception for Trubisky every game.
For sure.
And I think that's really what could be their demise in the playoffs.
Yes.
It's going to be quarterback play.
Because if you can stop that run, force them to pass the ball, it's the same thing. I mean, it's like when we likened them to the Cowboys earlier. I think this is where this comparison reigns true, and that's in their quarterback.
And I think this is a general game plan to beat the Bears, is to stop the run and then just get a little bit from your offense.
And just play solid defense all around.
And you just can't turn over the ball.
Exactly.
They're absolute ball hawks over in Chicago. So.
For sure.
All right, so this isn't really a big... I mean, again, we got seeding and all that, but I think this is actually a really good game that's been kind of overlooked in the NFL for this week. It's going to be the Steelers at the Saints. And I'm actually going to pick the Steelers over the Saints. The Saints have been kind of on a downward trend. They did not look good against the Panthers. I think they're I think they need a wake up call, and I think this is going to be it. So I'm going to take the Steelers over the Saints.
And I'm going to go with the Saints here. I see what you mean about them downward trending, but they're still one of the best teams. I think, in my opinion, the Saints are the best team in the NFL right now.
All right, so we got 2 more games here to go. Big game for the Vikings on this one, and we'll be scoreboard watching this one. It's Sunday night. It's going to be the Chiefs at the Seahawks. This is a huge game.
And I'm picking the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have been good all season. I think even in the face of adversity, when Mahomes has been pressured, throwing interceptions, I see them coming back and winning this game.
You know, their defense isn't going to get back on track because their defense is awful. And again, this is going to be another point in a great team that could hurt them in the playoffs. But I do think they get back on track. I think they score a lot of points on this one. And hopefully, and I believe they're gonna take care of business in Seattle.
For sure.
Last game, which surprising, it's Monday night, but it's gonna be the Broncos at the Raiders. I'm gonna have to go Broncos. It'd be nice to see Case Keenum kind of trend up a little bit here, just because I've always liked Case. I didn't think he was the Minnesota Vikings quarterback, but he's a great guy. I think the Broncos go ahead and take care of business.
And I mean, I'm just going to oppose you on this one. I'm going to go with the Raiders. I think it's at home in the Coliseum. I think the Raiders win that game. Biggest thing for me is I haven't seen the Viking-style quarterback that we saw in Case Keenum last year.
I think a lot of it was not only team, but I think he got a lot of luck. If you watch some of those passes.
Well, when you look at him, I mean, last year he throws off his back foot, and he's got receivers that are athletic enough to go get the ball. I mean, Diggs and Thielen saved him on countless passes.
Well, and we ran the ball pretty well last year.
For sure, and I just see the Raiders winning this game.
So that wraps it up for picks. A lot of big games, a lot of scoreboard watching. That'll wrap it up for us. So you'll just have to stay tuned next week. Another podcast on Wednesday. And we'll go ahead and review the Dolphins game, see what we got going for Chicago, what we got for standings. So stay tuned. We do have our email set up.
It's northstarsportscast@gmail.com.
And if you have any
questions or comments, please feel free to leave them there. We'll address them during the next podcast.
Give us some feedback, and we'll see you next week.